Live in Times Square. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
It is 9 p.m. here on the East Coast. The polls have just closed in 14 more states. Let's put up the scoreboard right now. Take a look at where things stand right there. Donald Trump with 123 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton with 97. Of course, 270 is what you need to win. We are paying so much attention right now to those battleground states, especially that state of Florida. Let's take a look at where the vote stands in Florida right now. There you see it. Just about 100,000 some votes separate Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump in the lead, 49-48. And Rebecca Jarvis, our senior business correspondent, is here. You've seen an interesting development as this news comes in.
Yes, George, with those polls so close in Florida right now, we're actually seeing a sell-off in the Mexican peso.
Okay, Rebecca's microphone went off. You're saying you're seeing a sell-off in the Mexican peso about 1%.
The Mexican peso is now down about 1% since that news has come in about.
Okay, Rebecca, we'll come back to you. 1% drop in the Mexican peso, and John Carl, those votes are so close right now.
It's unbelievably tight, and Trump has got a lead over 100,000 votes, well over 100,000 votes. But I see reasons here to think that Hillary Clinton will bounce back in Florida, and here's why. I've mentioned Miami-Dade County, of course, which is so important. There's still vote coming in there, but 93% of precincts reporting. But look right north of Miami-Dade in Broward County. This is a county that went overwhelmingly for Barack Obama in 2012 and 2008. Only 16% of precincts are reporting. There are a lot of Hillary Clinton votes left in Broward County.
Big catch right there. Let's also take a look at the state of North Carolina. It is a close state as well. Let's put up that board right now, see what's happening there in North Carolina. 49-49, just about 4,000 votes separate Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And Byron Pitts, another one of these changing states.
Oh, George, remember earlier Jonathan was talking about the Raleigh-Durham area. Well, the halfway point between Raleigh-Durham is a town called Apex, where my family's from, the apex of good living. In 2000, Apex had about 20,000 residents. It was 90% white. Today, Apex, a town of 42,000, the Hispanic population is up 300%, the black population up 80%, the Asian Pacific population up 600%. So this is no longer Jesse Helms' North Carolina. Also, one final point, and how important the ground game is in North Carolina. Donald Trump had 3 offices in North Carolina. Hillary Clinton had 33.
Okay, Byron Pitts, thanks very much. A lot of results coming in right now. Let's go through them. Starting out with the state of Texas, 38 electoral votes, one of the biggest prizes on the board, and Donald Trump, the projected winner in the state of Texas. Matthew Dowd, that is your home state. Democrats hope that state is changing as more Latinos come into that state, but not quite yet.
No, there was a huge increase in the Latino vote, and it actually seemed to be in single digits before that Comey announcement 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. But it seems to have trended back. I think what you're going to see is a less of a margin than a typical Republican gets there. Mitt Romney won it by 17, 18 points. You'll see a less of a margin, but it's still a red state.
Another Republican state, the state of Kansas, 6 electoral votes. Republicans dominate in that state, except for 1964. State has voted Republican every election since 1940. It goes again to the Republicans, Donald Trump. State of Nebraska, 5 electoral votes. But right now, Donald Trump is the projected winner of only 4 of them. John Carl, explain again. Nebraska, much like Maine.
Nebraska is the other state that splits its vote. The 2nd congressional district, just like it's in Maine, is one that voted for Barack Obama in 2008. It earned the nickname Obamaha because it's basically Omaha and the surrounding areas, and it's a place that the Clinton team is very hopeful.
Yeah, the Clinton team spent some money to pay some attention to Omaha, Cecilia.
Surprisingly so, exactly. And they're paying attention not just to Omaha, it's states that they never paid attention to before. Arizona. I mean, who would have ever thought we'd be talking about Arizona on a night like tonight? You mentioned Texas. They had hopes there. They were even looking at Utah, George. This map has changed for them. They've got their sights set high. We shall see.
They had hoped to change, but we're seeing a lot of red right there right now. South Dakota also in right now. 3 electoral votes in the state of South Dakota. That is going to go Republican as well. Only voted for Democrats in 4 presidential elections in state history, the last time in 1964. North Dakota, conservative state, not even competitive this year. Their 3 electoral votes go to Donald Trump as well. And Wyoming, 3 electoral votes. Of course, that's the home of former Vice President Dick Cheney. That goes to Donald Trump as well. And let's put up the map right now, because I want to show right up the middle of the country right now. Straight down the middle, you have a line of red right there for Donald Trump. Also across the south, fewer states there for Hillary Clinton, blue in the East, including one we see right now, and that is the state of New York, another one of Donald Trump's home states, Hillary Clinton's home state now as well. 29 electoral votes. It goes to Hillary Clinton, voted Democrat in every election since 1984. Tom Yamas, I got to bring you in on this because at the beginning of the general election campaign, Donald Trump kept talking about winning his home state.
Oh, he made a bold prediction. He said he was going to win New York. He felt the people there would vote for Donald Trump. The only campaigning he did in New York essentially was from Trump Tower and events in and around Manhattan, of course, but that clearly did not break his way. We've just gotten word that Governor Mike Pence is on his way to Trump Tower. He's probably already there. And we bet, if anything, they're watching Florida, Florida, Florida as close as possible right now, George.
Florida so close right now. A lot of states coming in right now that we can't project yet, including the state of Louisiana. 8 electoral votes, not enough votes coming in yet for us to project. New Mexico, 5 electoral votes. The Democrats hoping for a win there, part of their solid blue wall. Before 2008, it was a swing state. Voted for Bush in 2004, Gore in 2000. The Democrats had been counting on it, and Donald Trump had a real feud there with the Republican governor, Susanna Martinez. Minnesota, 10 electoral votes. Not enough data to coming in yet to project that one, and that was a state that Donald Trump made a late play for. One of the things we saw, Tom, they thought he was going to go to Wisconsin over the final weekend. Trump team said they saw some polls, went to Minnesota instead.
Trump himself says he saw a promising poll, and that's why they decided to put together a last-minute rally in Minneapolis. But we will say this, it was one of his biggest rallies in the final days. It was at an airport hangar. Trump Force One pulled up, people were going wild, and it was during a Vikings game, but people still showed out for Donald Trump. We'll see how it turns tonight, though.
But that is a solid blue state, going Democrat every single election since 1976.
We're saying Mitt Romney had a big rally in Minnesota in the final days of the 2012 campaign and lost the state big. So it's, you know, false hopes. It's a tough state for...
Can't call it yet, but it is a tough state for Republicans. But let's go back to these battlegrounds right now. Florida.
Florida, Florida, Florida. So I mentioned at the very beginning, George, that the state that's been the bellwether is Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County, no Republican has won Florida without winning Hillsborough County since Calvin Coolidge. He had a good campaign, good ground game. But take a look right here. Hillsborough County, I'll circle it right here by Tampa, and Hillary Clinton has a big lead in Hillsborough County. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to continue to be a bellwether, but it's always been a bellwether. Overall, in the state of Florida, the count is incredibly tight. It's still Donald Trump with a slight lead, but as I mentioned, a lot of Democratic votes to still be counted in Broward County.
Polls have just closed in some other battleground states as well, including the state of Michigan. 16 electoral votes. It's voted Democrat in the last 6 elections, voted for Bush in 1988. Matthew Dowd, that's one of your home states as well, even though you live in Texas right now. And Michigan has also been one of those states, like Pennsylvania, that Republicans towards the end think this is one we can get.
Well, when they looked at the limited nature of the map for Donald Trump and the places that he could only win this election, as we've been talking all night, he needed to flip a blue state. He experimented in Wisconsin. They thought about Pennsylvania. Then they finally, it looked like, settled on Michigan, and the Clinton folks got nervous about it. Sent a whole bunch of, Hillary went there, and on the last days, she sent a whole bunch of surrogates there. I mean, it is a state that's very divided. Detroit will vote overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton, and the rest of the state, rural areas of the state, will vote overwhelmingly for Donald Trump.
And David Curley is in Detroit. What are you seeing, David?
Well, exactly what Matthew's talking about is that the Trump campaign believes it's all about turnout. They were hoping they could get people out in these rural areas, and that was the one way that he might be able to crack this blue wall. But according to the exit polls, and the Trump campaign was hoping that the African-American vote would be lower, it was only 2% lower according to these exit polls. And also, we're finding out that 2 out of the 10 voters were white educated women, and Clinton is winning them by 10 points. Not a lot of votes counted here so far, but Hillary Clinton has the lead at this hour.
Okay, David Curley, thanks very much. David, your job's always such a big issue in that upper Midwest.
Huge issue, and that was what Donald Trump tried to capitalize on in trying to make Michigan the blue state that he was going to turn. If you take a look here, voters were asked what your job situation was versus 4 years ago. 39% said better today, 36% about the same, 25% said worse today. But it was very interesting. The Clinton campaign will say they were there these final days, sending the president and Hillary Clinton in the last 24 hours because they wanted to do those early voting states first, that they back-ended the states like Pennsylvania, Michigan. What we couldn't find out in the end was, were they truly worried about Michigan in the final days, and perhaps Trump's campaign, if they're not able to pull off Michigan, will wish they had a better ground game there all along.
Right, because if the Democrats can hold Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota straight across with Pennsylvania, very, very tough map for Donald Trump, even if he wins the state of Florida. We have another call right now. We can say ABC News can project that Donald Trump will win the state of Arkansas. 6 electoral votes there. Of course, as we said, Hillary Clinton was the first lady of Arkansas for many years, but that has been a Republican state in part because of the trend throughout the South. Democrats losing those working class whites, and that state is going to go again to Donald Trump and its 6 electoral votes. Why don't we go back to the battlegrounds right now in the upper Midwest? Move over to Wisconsin. That's got 10 electoral votes. Tough state for Donald Trump in the primaries. He lost that state to Ted Cruz in the primary. We don't have enough votes yet to bring that to call that right now. And Bill Kristol, this is also a state where the conservatives never warmed to Donald Trump, even though Ryan's previously RNC chair is from Wisconsin. Paul Ryan there couldn't support him, and strong talk radio voices there just didn't like him.
Right. I mean, Wisconsin, I don't know what it is about the upper Midwest. It's the Mormons in Utah and the Midwesterners in Wisconsin who resisted Trump the most among conservatives, actually. Paul Ryan's state, obviously. And since we're talking about Wisconsin, Paul Ryan, I mean, on the one hand, he'll be under great pressure, as people said earlier, from within his conference. On the other hand, if Republicans hold the House, don't win the presidency, and maybe lose the Senate, Paul Ryan's the one guy who came through, right? He said he wanted to, I mean, people like me criticized him for being too nice to Trump and kind of being too accommodating, but he said, I want to do what will preserve the majority. If he preserves the majority, Paul Ryan has a claim to be the most valuable Republican of the night, I think.
And another state has come in now for Hillary Clinton. That is the state of Connecticut. 7 electoral votes. Hillary Clinton is going to win those 7 electoral votes right now pretty handily in the state of Connecticut. So now 104 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton, 129 for Donald Trump, on the way to 270. We want to drill down now on another battleground state that is close, and this is the state of Colorado. 9 electoral votes out in the West. The whole state votes by mail, voted Democrat in 2008 and 2012. And Matthew Dowd, Colorado, when strategists look at Colorado, they look at Virginia and Colorado as a pair. The states tend to go the same way.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see tonight, they're going to go in the same way. We see Virginia's close. I think Colorado is going to be close in this. And again, another state where the divisions within the state, Denver, the city of Denver and the suburbs, are very different from the rest of the state. And Boulder, obviously, is a very Democratic area of the state. But we're seeing it just like places like Florida, Michigan, other states, is this geographic pots of votes that each side is getting and turning out.
They're turning out. Another state, battleground state we're keeping an eye on right next door, the state of Arizona, with its 11 electoral votes. The Clinton team went in there late, sent Michelle Obama there as well, spent some money at the end, even though it has been Cecilia Vega's solid red state.
One of these anomalies on the map for Hillary Clinton. A Democrat hasn't won there in 20 years, but you were mentioning Colorado, same thing there. They were really hoping that the Latino vote would come out in both Arizona and Colorado. Colorado is one of these states that they thought they had locked in pretty early on, and then they kind of backed away and just went back in recently towards the end of the campaign and started pouring some more ad money in there because they started to get nervous. Arizona, they think they have this locked in going in, so we shall see.
They think they had Arizona locked in. They don't need Arizona, but if they had, that would be big news right there. They would love the state of Florida. We're going to stay on the state of Florida because it is so close right now. What do you see in John Carl?
Florida still remains unbelievably tight. I was going to give you, can I give you one on Colorado since I'm right here? This is the Jefferson County, Colorado. This is a key county, a swing county in Colorado, western Denver suburbs, and she is outperforming outperforming Barack Obama pretty handily. So that's a good sign for her. But if you want to go back out to the to the state of Florida, we are still, look at this, 48-49. Trump still has that lead, but let's check into those counties outside of Miami. Again, Broward County, overwhelmingly Democratic county, now 48% reporting. So there still is more than half the vote to be counted in a county that went overwhelmingly for Barack Obama and is going overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton.
So you're going to have this race, Matthew Dowd, at the end in Florida. You're going to have the Panhandle versus Broward County getting in those last several votes.
Yeah, and I think it's going to come down to a few thousand votes. Florida's going to shift. We saw that in a lot of the polls. Florida was one of those pivot states, just like North Carolina was a pivot state and Ohio was a pivot state. All the polls, there were some polls that had Donald Trump ahead, some polls that had Hillary Clinton slightly ahead, but they were all within a point. And it looks like Florida's going to be within a point.
Another quick break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to ABC News coverage of Election Night 2016. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are back now here in Times Square. Let's take another look at where the map stands right now. The Electoral College count, you see it there, 104 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton, 129 for Donald Trump, the magic number 270. Let me check back in with Amy Roback, who's about 10 blocks north here at the New York Hilton. That is the Trump headquarters tonight.
That's right, George, and we are seeing a very different scene here than we were just about 30 minutes ago. There is a lot of cheering, a lot of energy in this room as those results start to come in. Anytime anyone starts talking about Florida, you hear the crowd here erupt with cheers, chanting USA, USA. I'm seeing smiles, I'm seeing laughter. That is something I was not seeing an hour ago. So you can just feel the energy in this room increasing as people are now becoming a lot more hopeful than it seems they were earlier in the evening, George.
And Matthew Dowd, if he's in the game in Florida, I want to bring this question to you and then have John Carl start to pull up some Electoral College maps, possibilities right here. He's in the game. Donald Trump is in the game if he can pull out that state of Florida.
Yes, he's definitely in the game. It was going to be basically if she won Florida, it's slam dunk. There's really no path for him. Florida is the pillar of the game that he needs to keep running, and then he needs to pick up, if he picks up Florida, he needs to pick up North Carolina. And then he starts needing to pick up across the country. Yeah. But Florida's the first one.
Let's illustrate that now.
But not Hillary Clinton.
No.
Pivotal.
Let's illustrate that right now with Donald Trump. Show the states that he's got to win to put himself in contention as we go into this night or later into the night.
Well, if you look at it, it's basically 12 battleground states we've been looking at. And if you look at the ones that going into today, Hillary Clinton had a lead. As you can see, she's already got over 270. So what Trump has to do is to win all the ones that we had as toss-ups. He has to win Florida. He has to win North Carolina. He has to win Ohio, win New Hampshire, and win Arizona. And then he needs to find a way to pick off one of those traditionally blue states. It could be Nevada. If he does Nevada, he gets there as long as he also wins that one congressional district we mentioned up in Maine.
So what we're going to be doing all night long as we watch Florida, as we watch North Carolina, those two states that are so close now between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, if he manages to win those two states, then we have to start to focus on those blue states, those Midwestern blue states up in the north. He's got to find something there to pick off.
Yeah, if he's not going to win in Nevada, if he's not going to win in New Hampshire, he has to get one of the biggies. He has to find a way to win. I think the one that they are most focused on, they feel the most potential, is, as you mentioned, the state of Michigan. It's also a state, by the way, that Democrats feel good about, but we're the most nervous, if you could say, about any of those, industrial Midwest states.
And David, you picked up one of the signs for why Donald Trump is sort of hanging in there in Florida.
Yeah, if Donald Trump wins in Florida, you can bet that the Clinton campaign is going to look at women voters in Florida. Take a look at this. We zero in on the exit polls, and Clinton is getting 51% of female voters in Florida to Trump's 44. And I pointed out only because so far the exit polls show her doing much better with women in Michigan, New Hampshire, Ohio, Wisconsin, Georgia, Colorado, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, where she's doing the best among women. But in Florida, of all the battlegrounds, is where she's performing at this level. She's surpassing this level in every other battleground.
Stephanie Cutter, John Carl mentioned there was some sign of a little bit of nervousness in the Democratic camp on the state of Michigan. Take us through those states in the Midwest. Which ones are they worried about? Which ones could show some weakness?
Well, I think in Michigan, they do think it's going to be much closer than 2012. They think white college-educated women, like much of the Midwest, will bring them over the top. It looks like the African-American vote is down a little bit in Michigan, and the rural vote is significantly higher than it was in 2012. So it's going to be very tight. In Ohio, much of their early vote was very good in Ohio. They were outperforming where President Obama was. There are some bellwether counties in Ohio that we always look for. They're not in yet. Much of it surrounds suburban areas outside of Cleveland and Cincinnati. And in Pennsylvania, they feel very good about Pennsylvania from all signs. Traditional leaning Republican counties outside of Philadelphia are going for her in very strong ways. That's a very strong sign for what's going to happen across the state.
Alex, 15 seconds.
But Florida may be telling us something about the future in other states. Hillary Clinton's doing well in the I-4 corridor. That may mean she'll do well in Colorado. Trump is doing well in North Florida. The voters that David Muir called the left behind voter, Michigan.
Yeah.
Coming up, we're live as millions vote across the country. 10 states left to go, including that crucial battleground of Nevada. We'll be right back.
You totally
To Action In. Your voice, your vote.
So good to be back with you. Hello and welcome to our continuing coverage of Your Voice, Your Vote 2016, as we are covering more than 700 local and national races.
We have a team of more than 60 journalists working tonight. We'll continue scrolling up to the minute results at the bottom of your TV screen.
So let's get right to it. In the presidential race in Georgia, looking at our results, and it's Donald Trump at 63% to 35% for Hillary Clinton. The Libertarian Gary Johnson's pulling 2% right now. This is 29% reporting, and it's Donald Trump with a sizable lead. Georgia has 16 electoral votes.
And 270 electoral votes are needed to win the presidency tonight. Right now, Hillary Clinton stands with 104. Donald Trump has 129.
And breaking news in the U.S. Senate race here in Georgia with so much at stake.
Just about the last 10 minutes or so, ABC News and the Associated Press have both projected incumbent Republican Senator Johnny Isakson winning his re-election. This would be his third term in the U.S. Senate. Here are the numbers right now. 34% reporting in Georgia. Isakson leading far and away with 62% of the votes as they are still being counted and coming in tonight. Barksdale, the Democrat political rookie, taking him on tonight with 34%. Alan Buckley, the Libertarian, coming in with 4%, again with just about 34% reporting. Now, Isakson and his supporters are expected to be celebrating tonight in Buckhead.
Oh, I'm sure they're festive. And Channel 2's Richard Belcher's in the middle of it as our live Team 2 coverage continues from the Grand Hyatt on Peachtree.
Yeah, Justin and Jovita, this is almost entirely a presidential viewing party. The supporters of the senator are here, but frankly, they don't know that ABC and the Associated Press have called this because that's not the network that's on. Let me show you. Excuse me. Have you heard the news? ABC and Associated Press have called the race for Johnny Isakson.
Johnny's done a great job for Georgia, and it shouldn't be.
He wins, according to AP.
That's great for Georgia.
Did you know?
No, sir.
Glad to break the news to you. So the evening has really been focused on what Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are doing. That guy kind of took it in stride, but good news here. Now they'll refocus again on the presidential race, and I assume before the evening is out, we will hear from the Johnny Isakson, who is headed for a third term in the U.S. Senate. Live at Republican headquarters and also Isakson headquarters in Buckhead, Richard Belcher, Channel 2 Action News.
All right, thank you for that, Richard. From the Isakson campaign to our live Team 2 coverage, turning to Democrat Jim Barksdale and how his supporters are feeling.
Channel 2's Wendy Corona is with them in downtown Atlanta. Wendy.
We are at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Atlanta, actually awaiting for Jim Barksdale to arrive any moment now. He's expected to get up there on the stage, and perhaps being, since this news has just come in about Isakson being reelected into the Senate, he may very well give a concession speech here. Now, some of his campaign folks were telling me they did feel that they have a lot of momentum, and they said if they were just given 6 more months of campaigning, they really feel like they could have really made a difference here. Being since the presidential race has been too close to call, they were hoping, since the reality of voting for Senate typically goes with the top of the ticket, they were really hoping that this might be the year when Georgia goes blue. Now, of course, we are still waiting for Jim Barksdale to arrive here at the ballroom at the Grand Regency, and when we do, we'll get him for you live. For now, we are live in downtown Atlanta. Wendy Corona, Channel 2 Action News.
All right, Wendy, thank you so much. Now, voters all over Georgia had the chance to decide on amendments to the Constitution. Perhaps the largest one that everyone is watching for sure, is Amendment 1 that would allow the state to intervene in chronically failing public schools.
And look at what's happened here. A big no, with 29% reporting no, leading that effort unquestionably.
And we are watching other amendments that were on your ballot today, 2 and 3 as well. But count on Channel 2 Action News and ABC News for the most comprehensive election night coverage. ABC's continuing coverage of Your Voice, Your Vote is straight ahead.
Do you love Facebook? Because we're on that right now. Facebook Live. You can watch us through the app, also at WSBTV.com. Keep it right here.
Dropped, dragged, crushed, or
And we are back now, 9:30 in the East, election 2016. Let's take a look at where things stand right now. 104 electoral votes for Hillary Clinton, 129 for Donald Trump. It takes 270 to win, focusing most on those 12 battleground states we'll be keeping an eye on all night long. And let's go right to John Carl with the latest on Florida.
Well, Florida is as tight as it has been, George. Take a look at this. Donald Trump still has a lead, still has a significant lead. But again, as I mentioned before, The Miami area, specifically the county just above Miami, Broward County, this is an overwhelmingly Democratic county. More than a third of the vote is still outstanding. Donald Trump can still, Hillary Clinton can still harvest enough votes in Broward County.
How much of the overall vote is in so far?
The overall vote is about 90%. Let's take a look overall. (94% of the vote in Florida is in.
And you have a little more than 100,000 vote lead now for Donald Trump. We're also keeping a close eye on the state of North Carolina. Let's pull up North Carolina right now, see where that stands. There it is right there, 49 for Donald Trump. We got about a 60,000 vote lead, Matthew Dowd, over Hillary Clinton there in North Carolina.
Yeah, and this is we're seeing multiple states are going to go down to the wire, and that we may not even be decided by this evening. Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, it's going to be a close race.
Those are two states that Donald Trump must win. One state that Hillary Clinton is counting on, the state of New Hampshire, up in the north. Let's pull that up. Right now, there you see Donald Trump ahead there as well, much closer. There's about 78,000 to about 76,000 there in the state of New Hampshire.
And New Hampshire is, a state that is critical to one of Donald Trump's path, and George, incredibly close.
Incredibly close right now. Another one that is close, state of Michigan. Blue state of Michigan, as we said, a lot of attention there in the end, and Donald Trump also ahead right there right now, about 30,000 votes there over Hillary Clinton and Cecilia Vega. This has to be just a little bit.
Yeah, they were a little uncertain about Michigan going in. There was sort of maybe a head fake going on. They thought that they had this in the bag initially, and then they got really nervous and went back to Michigan just late last week. Hillary Clinton paid a trip there. They sent former President Bill Clinton there, and President Obama was there. This is a state they want to win. They're not 100% sure about it. And the issue of trade has come up a lot for Hillary Clinton in the course of this race, especially in the primaries with Bernie Sanders and her issue on TPP and her flip-flop, as he would say, on that. And really, it's been used to illustrate what her opponents would say has been inconsistencies in Hillary Clinton's willingness to say anything, in their perspective, to get elected. And this is something that has hammered her hard over the course of this race.
Okay, we have another projection to make right now. Another part of the solid red South has come in for Donald Trump. That is the state of Louisiana. 8 electoral votes, part of the Republican southern base, that has come in for Donald Trump. So you're the map fill in red there across the South and right down the middle of the country. Tom Yums, what are you hearing from the Trump camp?
Well, right now we're hearing from inside the campaign. They are very buoyant right now. They are happy about what they're seeing. In fact, there's a tweet that just went out. Eric Trump has tweeted out a picture of his dad with Governor Mike Pence inside of Trump headquarters there in their war room, as they're calling it, as they watch returns come in. They're saying they're very excited right now. They like what they're seeing so far from the map and the states they have won so far. We'll see where it goes from here.
See where it goes from here. But, right now, this could be, as you were saying, Matthew Dowd, a very, very long night.
It could be a really long night. We're seeing this, and we're seeing Donald Trump overperform in a lot of places that people didn't think, people had questions about. He'd get the enthusiasm enough. But he is, in many places, he's setting records in rural and ex-urban counties in almost every single state.
Alex Castellanos?
Amazing story. The missing Trump voter that we've all been wondering about. Well, they've shown up. We've found him. He's in rural America. They're out there voting at intense levels. And that may mean that he can hang on in North Carolina and maybe in Michigan. If he can do that and keep Arizona, that would get Trump to 275.
Martha Raddatz.
And George, they're talking about this enthusiasm. I saw enthusiasm for Trump. I definitely did in these rural areas. They were concerned in Ohio and Pennsylvania that they could get the vote out. Talked to some GOP chairman there who said, we're very worried because there's no organization here. But in the last couple of days, they really saw that ramp up. I travel around, I saw Trump signs all over the place. People were doing that themselves. Even if Trump didn't have an office, they'd bring in those signs, they'd put them in front of their houses. And of course, in these areas, economy is very, very important. It's the #1 issue, for example, in Ohio. And that's where Trump is leading among those who are worried about the economy.
And George, let's look at the gap in Michigan. This is the exit poll out of Michigan right now. Just the breakdown when it comes to rural voters versus some of those cities that, Detroit, for example, where Hillary Clinton's going to likely overperform Donald Trump. But look at this. Donald Trump 54 to Hillary Clinton 39. This could illustrate the success he's having in rural America tonight.
That is right. Now let's take a look at the picture of Donald Trump now watching the returns up there in Trump Tower. There he is, right there, surrounded by supporters, including, as Tom was saying, there's Indiana Governor Mike Pence's running mate right there as well. And John, as we look at that.
Yeah, so here's why they're smiling. I mean, if you look at the key states, if you look at New Hampshire, Michigan, North Carolina, and Florida, right now, and they're still counting votes, but right now, in Florida, he still has that slight lead. In North Carolina, he has a lead, very close. In New Hampshire, they've only counted 24% of the votes, but he looks like he has a chance to do something in New Hampshire. And Michigan, again, only 18% of the votes counted, but he's got off to an early lead. But let me just give one note of caution to the folks at the Trump headquarters. If you look into Florida, again, back to that ever-important county right now of Broward County, and we have 75% of precincts reporting, there is still about more than 200,000 votes outstanding, potential Democratic votes in Broward County by my calculation.
That would be a very big chunk of Cecilia Vega the Clinton campaign needs.
And she's been there 4 times within the last few days, I believe. Look, Florida, they have invested heavily in, not just in advertising, in visits. This is one of her most traveled to states since early voting began. And they really tried to lock in that early vote there, build up a firewall, if you will, against Donald Trump, try and lock in these voters. We were talking about that I-4 corridor, that coveted territory of I-4 corridor, and the demographic shift has shifted there. We're not just talking about Cubans anymore. We're talking about a lot of Puerto Ricans that have moved into the area, and they tend to vote more Democratic, especially in Florida. And the Clinton campaign is banking on that coalition for turning out to them.
Terry Moran, one of the things we're seeing revealed here is something you saw in your travels across the country, this real split between the rural and the urban areas.
Absolutely. You go 100 miles outside of a major metropolitan area and you hit it head on. And I'm thinking in particular of a middle school mock election in New Bethlehem, Pennsylvania that I went to, where Trump, not surprisingly, got 86% of the vote from the kids. And I said, well, okay, can you work with the Hillary supporters to make the country better? And they said, no, what we have to do is split this country.
Split this country?
Split this country. Look, the smartest girl in the class, 13-year-old girl. I said, well, we tried that, and it didn't really work. But I got to say, well, one other thing, on June 23rd, I stayed up all night in London covering the Brexit thing. And the night began pretty much the same way, with the Brexit people, Nigel Farage, almost acknowledging defeat. And then, one by one, Newcastle upon Tyne, and then Sunderland came in and surprised everyone as the wave began. I'm not saying that's happening, but I've got a sense of deja vu happening here.
Byron Pitts.
George, I'm fascinated by this change in America, or what you're saying is happening in rural America versus urban America. In 1967, the Kerner Commission came out and said that there were 2 Americas, one black, one white, separate and unequal. Now it seems like we've gone in a different direction, where I would think many minorities, people of color, feel like America is now better for them. There are more black people in college than there were 40 years ago. Life expectancy has increased. There's been a 200% increase in the number of black families making more than $200,000. So for minorities in America, they think America is now a better place. But for rural, working class, white America, it seems like they're unhappy with where America is.
They've been stuck for an awful long time. And Alex Castellanos, one of the ways you put it is the difference between Starbucks and Budweiser America.
Yeah, I looked at the all 50 states and where you have the highest per capita Starbucks per voter. And of the 22 states that you can look at Hillary Clinton carrying, 16 of hers are in the top half. Donald Trump's states that he's carrying, 18 of his 25 are in the bottom half, low Starbucks. So, but that's why this is the last election, I think, that Republicans can rev up the engine past the red line and try to win with the old white guy strategy. It nearly blew up the car this election. So the challenge for Republicans is we've got to be a party that appeals to more Americans than just that. How do we win in the I-4 corridor? How do we appear to the younger, educated voters? We can't be the party that's not attracting people who think and read.
Mayor Rawlings Blake?
I think it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to appeal to those voters when you don't have any understanding of urban America. When the only thing you can say about American cities are that they're basically cesspools. You can't grow your party. When you take a look at it, George, almost 90% of the population lives in cities and metro areas. Almost 90% of the jobs are coming from cities and metro areas. It's no mistake that this is going to be a city versus rural vote.
And John Carl, let's also look at another battleground state we haven't looked at in a little while, Virginia. The state of Virginia, which is, of course, one that Hillary Clinton is counting on. What are we seeing there?
Well, this one looks tight, too. Story of the night. Take a look at this. We've got 79% reporting, and Donald Trump still has a lead in Virginia. Now, I should caution, once again, we see the Democratic counties coming in slower. One of the biggest, maybe the most important Democratic county is Fairfax County. That's up north, just outside of D.C. So if you look at Fairfax County, right now, 80% reporting. Clinton has a 33-point lead, so she's got a lot more Democratic votes there. But Virginia is a lot closer than I thought it would be at this point.
I want to bring in the chair of the Democratic National Committee, now Donna Brazile, the acting chair of the Democratic National Committee. Donna, thank you for joining us. Right now, we're seeing these close states across the board. We're seeing Florida, we're seeing North Carolina, we're seeing New Hampshire, we're seeing Michigan, we're seeing Virginia. How worried are you?
Well, George, we're still confident that there are lots of votes that have still not been counted. Votes that are in traditional Democratic areas, and of course, votes that we believe that will go to Secretary Clinton and Senator Kaine. So I'm still confident. I've talked to the team back at the headquarters here in Brooklyn. We know that based on what we've heard early in the day, with the kind of lines that we saw, not just in Durham and North Carolina, the lines that we knew existed in Detroit, the lines in Pennsylvania. At the end of the night, I'm confident. Maybe it's too early to count all of the votes, but as soon as all of the votes are counted, I think you'll see that the Democrats will overcome some of the shortages we're witnessing right now.
I had some sources tell me that they were actually seeing some weakness or sensing some weakness in Flint and Detroit.
Well, earlier today, as you know, some of the voters that we rely on, these are reliable Democratic voters, they tend not to vote before 4:30, 5 o'clock. I was on several radio stations and just encouraging people to stay in line. So, again, earlier today, Detroit, Flint, we had, it was slow, steady, but then it started to come in after 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. And in fact, the last message I had an hour ago was to remind people to stay in line. They have the right to vote if they stay in line.
And Donna, of course, you were Al Gore's campaign manager back in 2000. You remember well the days of the recount in Florida. We headed in that direction again?
Well, I hope not, George, but I guess if that will happen, we're prepared in Florida and any other state for that outcome. But right now, I want to see what happens in Broward. I want to see what happens in West Palm Beach. You know all the outstanding counties, even some precincts in Duval County. So I'm optimistic. Even if we can't overcome that big hurdle, I still believe that there are enough votes out there before we start popping the champagne.
And Don, I just have to ask you, because Donald Trump has been bringing it up over the last several days of this campaign, what was revealed in the WikiLeaks, some emails that suggested you had given debate questions to the Clinton campaign. Any regrets about that?
George, let me be clear. As you know, I've never had access to debate questions. As a Democratic strategist and operative, I work with everybody to ensure that whether it's topics or trend lines or what we're talking about, but the event that they claimed that there were debate questions, as you well know, I haven't seen the WikiLeaks. It was a forum. Look, I have enough time to make my case, but right now I'm focused, like everybody else in the campaign, on making sure that every voter who's out there in line stay in line. And we believe that there are still votes to come in all across the country for Hillary Clinton. So we're expecting a good night tonight.
Okay, Donna Brazile, thanks very much for joining us. Let me go back to Paula Ferris now in Miami. You talked about the possibility of a recount. Walk us through what procedures are in place down there.
Right. Well, George, I don't mean to give everybody back in the studio immediate indigestion, but it is time to start talking about a mandatory recount. Matt Dowd, I know that you said you were expecting a 1% differential, but if the differential is 0.5%, that automatically triggers the mandatory recount. It will be ordered by the Secretary of State. It then has to be completed by next Thursday at 3 o'clock. So those are the rules, and that's the protocol in place. Again, we're talking about 50,000 votes, And right now, those votes still coming in from Democratic-heavy Broward County. If Hillary Clinton can make up some of the ground there, and if we're talking 50,000 differential votes, automatic trigger for a mandatory recount.
Okay, that's the situation in Florida. And Charlie Gibson, you're saying you're seeing something in Virginia.
Well, it's just 10,000 votes difference, so over 3 million votes cast. John's been talking about the Northern Virginia vote. You get so caught up in these numbers, you know, and the tightening and the opening. It's just an amazingly close situation, and Virginia's now an example of it.
And it's a state that the Trump campaign has essentially written off weeks ago. This became much less of a battleground. The assumption was that Hillary Clinton not only had the advantage there, but had a big advantage in Virginia. So to see it this close is really a sign of the strength of Donald Trump.
They had stopped advertising there, Cecilia.
Advertising there, and let's not forget where her running mate Tim Kaine is from. He is the senator of this state. They thought this was their state for the taking. I would love to hear from someone on the Clinton team right now about how they're digesting these numbers.
Tim Kaine has never lost a race in the state of Virginia.
Has never lost a race. They're hoping that that stays the same tonight.
And coming up, voters in 10 states still heading to the polls. We're going to be live here in Times Square with the campaigns and across the country when we come back.
The successful
And we are back now. Election night 2016 coming up on 10 p.m. in the East. Let's take a look at where things stand right now in the Electoral College. There it is, 104 for Hillary Clinton, 137 for Donald Trump. You need 270 to win. And John called, there are so many close battleground states right now.
Here are 5 that we're looking at. First of all, obviously the state of Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, incredibly close, Michigan, surprisingly close, and New Hampshire. Let's take a quick look at where all of those stands. In Florida, Donald Trump still has a lead. In North Carolina, Donald Trump still has a lead. In Virginia, Donald Trump has a lead. Now, again, a lot of Democratic votes to still be counted in Northern Virginia. But Virginia is going to be incredibly close. Whether or not he wins, it's going to be a lot closer than anybody thought. New Hampshire, only a third of the vote in, but Donald Trump tracking a little bit of a lead there. And in Michigan, a state with only 21% in, but Donald Trump ahead.
And Matthew Dowd, these states are all so close. Coming into this race tonight, it looked like Hillary Clinton, convergence of national polls, had her at about a 4% lead.
Yeah, and I had expected her to win nationally by 5, which she may still win nationally by 5. But what we're seeing right now is a divergence between the national number and the Electoral College in those key states. And what is being set up right now, the possibility that Hillary Clinton could win the national vote by a large percentage, 4 or 5 points, and possibly by a few thousand votes. We have no idea what's going to happen in the Electoral College.
I mean, if Donald Trump holds on to the lead in 3 of those states, he gets elected president. If he holds on to the lead in Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia, or Florida, North Carolina, and Michigan, he's there.
Because if he wins one of those states up in the north, Michigan, Pennsylvania, he's got a real possibility.
Absolutely.
Right there. Cokie Roberts, incredible.
It is very different from what we were seeing going into it, and very different from what we're seeing earlier this evening, and complete reversal of what we were talking about in terms of the Electoral College going for her and maybe the popular vote for him. That was an earlier theory, and what it is as we've said earlier, it is the rural votes getting out. It is the non-college educated people getting out, the people who feel like this new America that we've been talking about has left them out and left them behind economically and culturally. And so they are ready to show their distaste for the current country.
Charlie.
What's dismaying about this to me, George, looking at this, as I said, from a distance, is the disparities in so many groups. There's such a difference between urban and rural. There's such a difference between men and women. There is such a difference between college educated and not college educated. There is such a difference between whites and blacks. It is dismaying the polarity of all of these groups. It simply bespeaks a country which is deeply, deeply divided, and that makes going forth very frightening no matter who wins.
In asking the question, what candidate is qualified to be president, honest and trustworthy, has the temperament to be president, the voters who say both have the temperament, 5%. Same thing with the qualifications. 5% say both. 2% say both are honest and trustworthy. They're not willing to give an inch to the other side.
Tom Yamas.
Yeah, on Charlie's point of this sort of two Americas theory, I want to tell a story, and it takes place in Michigan. We just got some exit polling. It says that 50% of the people who voted in Michigan say trade kills jobs. I was there at a rally, and I saw this guy. He was just going crazy for Trump. So I said, "You're so fired up. What's your story?" He says, "I'm an auto worker, and I can tell you this much. The union bosses are going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Everyone on the shop floor is voting for Donald Trump." His message with Ford and their plans in Mexico and all that definitely helped him out.
And Rebecca Jarvis, I think you're wired up right now. What are you seeing?
The closer this looks, George, the more stocks are falling, the more Mexican peso is falling. And these have both been a barometer of Trump's prospects in this race throughout the campaign. As Trump has pulled ahead in the polls, we've seen a sell-off in both the peso as well as stocks. As he's fallen behind, we've seen things pick up in the stock market. So tonight, the closer things look, the more we're seeing the Dow down now 500 points.
The whole world is watching right now, and all eyes are on Florida. Polls about to close in 4 more states. 21 electoral votes up for grabs. We're going to be right back. It's election night 2016.
Okay, Google, show me Korean restaurants in Boulder.
I found a few places.
The new Pixel, phone by Google, exclusively on Verizon, the only next-gen network that lets you get the most out of it.
How is this possible?
Because Verizon LTE Advanced delivers 50% faster peak speeds in 50 cities coast to coast. Buy a Pixel and get up to $400 back, and get 20 gigs of data with no surprise overages, and 4 lines for only $40 each. Why settle when you can have it all on Verizon?